Hey, what's up? JR Noble here, and I'll be doing a series of Ableton plugin videos where I'll be breaking down individual plugins from Ableton and showing you kind of what they do and what some of them don't do, along with maybe some of the common uses and some uncommon uses for those plugins. Depending on which version of Ableton you're using, there may be some plugins that you don't have access to. For example, if you don't have Ableton Suite, you won't have access to a plugin like Amp. However, what I'll do is in the video title, I will place intro, standard, and suite depending on the plugin. So for example, auto filter is a plugin that is accessible to any user that has Ableton intro, Ableton standard, or Ableton suite. So I'll put that in the title next to auto filter. It'll say intro, standard, and suite. And so you can look at the title and see which versions of Ableton that particular plugin is you'll be able to use it with. All right, so that's just a quick introduction for this series, and I'm going to dive into the very first plugin that I'll be doing for this series. The first plugin we're going to look at is this auto filter, and we're using a noise generator that I got for free from Melda Productions, and it's just going to play some white noise, which basically is all frequencies playing at the same time at the same loudness. So you'll see on this spectral analyzer that it'll fill up this entire range of frequencies across this spectrum. So I have the spectral analyzer along with this noise generator just so you can see and hear what this auto filter is doing. So now I'll turn on this auto filter, and you'll see here that we have 5 different settings for this auto filter, and I'll just quickly go through those so you understand what it is that this filter is doing if you're not already familiar with it. So right now we have this set to a low pass filter, so everything underneath this orange line is passing through and everything above it is getting cut out. And then if we switch to a high pass filter, it's going to change and you're going to hear a lot of the high end and it's going to cut out the low end. And then if I switch to a band pass filter, everything underneath this curve is passing through while everything outside of it's getting cut out. And then we have what's called a notch filter, which kind of does the opposite of this band pass filter. You'll see that it's cutting out all these frequencies in the middle here. And then we have what's called a morph filter, which will just kind of change between each one of these other 4 filters if we move this knob. I'll talk more about the other features here, like the LFO envelope and maybe the quantize and all those other parameters that you see here on the auto filter in just a minute. But I'll really quickly just go over some common uses that you might see for this auto filter, which would be something like a filter sweep. So if I turn on this noise generator, one thing that a lot of times people will use this for, and you'll hear it right away, is filter sweep for like white noise. So if we just filter sweep this up, or sometimes you might hear it in the opposite direction coming from high to low. And that's just a basic filter sweep. Now the LFO can be used to do this for you. So essentially it's just gonna kind of move this around for you. And that's what the LFO is here for. And you can start to tell it how you want it to operate and how you want it to change this filter over time. So if I turn on the white noise again and then I add in this LFO, you're going to hear that this filter is going to start to open up. And because this is set so low, it doesn't open up super high. So what you can do is move this up more and have it open up more or higher frequencies. And if we change the rate, it's just going to make this LFO move faster and slower. And we can, if we hit this little music note, it'll make it stay in time with the song, whatever we have set for the global tempo. So another common use you might find for this, other than creating white noise, shifters, and riser kind of effects, would be to place it on a synth. And so we have a synth here, and I have just a basic sounding chord. Not the most amazing thing, but we'll spice it up a bit by adding this auto filter on there. And I have it set to a rate of 1 bar, and we have the LFO turned up. So then this will just open up over the course of 1 bar, and it'll start to make this synth sound a little bit different. And so now you can play around with the rate and the type of LFO to get some different sounds for the synth that you're using. So you can see how you can start to get some different sounds. And then if we use this phase option, we can start to give it some panning and start to move it around a little bit so we can give this sound a little bit more movement. And offset just moves the start point of the rate. So if we offset this a little bit, it'll be offset from the actual global tempo of the track. So if you listen closely, you'll hear that it goes from being on beat with the song, or on beat with the metronome, to being slightly off beat. And so you can start to use this LFO now to create some rhythmic movement within just a basic kind of chord going on with a synth. And now a slightly less common use for the auto filter, at least as far as I know of, it doesn't really get used much in this fashion, is for these drums, we're gonna make use of this envelope feature. So I'm gonna turn this LFO amount down so all we're hearing is this envelope. And what's cool about this envelope feature is that if you look at these drums, there are all these different peaks and valleys going on in these waveforms. And the envelope will actually listen for the attack and then release based off of what I set these. And it'll start to work based off of the waveforms that are coming into this. And so it'll react really quickly or really slowly based off of this attack. And then it'll release really quickly or really slowly based on what I have this set to. And then I can say by how much I want it to react in one direction or the other. And the positive versus the negative kind of depends on if you're using this low pass or this high pass. And I'll show you just what I mean by that. So this really works well when this set to a positive and you're using the low pass filter. And what I'll do is I'll hit play on this and I'll play around with this release so you'll start to hear how it's reacting based off of the drums coming in. So this is what it sounds like without the filter. And this is what it sounds like with the filter. Now the release is really fast, so you're not going to hear anything going on. So as I move this release up, you'll start to hear something. You'll start to hear it change. And so when we set this kind of fast, not too fast, but slightly fast release, you'll hear that the filter just opens up just enough based on those drums coming in, and it gets this kind of swooshy effect kind of going on. And then we can take this in the opposite direction, and we can set this to a high pass filter and get a similar effect, but in the opposite direction. So it almost sounds like this sloshy sound now where you're like stepping in a puddle. And so that's the envelope feature that you can use on this auto filter, and that's kind of an uncommon use, at least that I've used it for, and I haven't really seen anybody else using it in that fashion. So that's something that I like to do. And a couple of the other features that we have here that I didn't really touch on are this section right here where you can choose between the different auto filters. So there's different auto filter modelings so that if you choose these, you'll get a slightly different sound based off of which one you choose. And you'll see if you choose anything other than clean, you get this other knob that pops up, which is drive, so we can turn it up, turn it down. And so when we turn this up more, kind of turns up the volume a little bit, gives us a little bit more of the filtering give us a little bit more of the color from the filter. And then you have this quantized feature, which is only really useful when you're playing something inside of the session. And what I mean by that is, so if I just turn on this white noise generator, you'll hear that this LFO, when I turn it up, it goes at a rate of 1/16th, but the quantized feature won't do anything. And then once I hit play, it'll actually start working on the sound. So if I hit turn this on, so you hear how the LFO rate kind of stopped working. And then if I play this, if I hit play now, I'll turn this off. I'll turn this back on, and when I hit play and turn the quantize on, you'll hear that the quantize starts affecting this LFO at the same time. All right, so I had to change the rate a little bit so it would be noticeable kind of effect. But when I turn the quantize on and I had the rate going while I'm playing something in the session, then you could hear that it affects the auto filter a little bit differently. And this is kind of cool because you can have the LFO now going at some kind of rate that isn't quantized to the grid and play around with that while you have this quantized setting going on at the same time. And you can hear it sounds a lot more stepwise with this quantize feature going on. It kind of jumps really quickly as opposed to this smoother kind of filter sound if we didn't use the quantize. All right, so that's the auto filter plugin for Ableton, and those are some of the common uses and uncommon uses and some of the things that the auto filter does. And I'll tell you one thing that the auto filter doesn't do is it doesn't cook lunch, so I'm gonna go get myself some food. And if you'd like to get access to over 70 free plugins that are both Mac and PC friendly, then make sure you click on the link below this video in the description, and it'll take you over to a page where you can get access to this sheet that I've put together that has links to over 70 free plugins that are good, and they're used by myself personally, but other music producers in the industry as well. So definitely click on that link below this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to my channel, and drop a comment below to let me know what you liked best about this video. All right, so once again, I'm JR Noble. You can check me out at jrnoble.co. I'll talk to you later.